If the building is torn down, the variance is effectively revoked.
No objection to that. This request is specifically tied to the building. It's a unique structure and a unique location. And so it's absolutely no objection to that.
Correct, thank you.
And I don't have a whole lot more to add to my presentation that was in the staff report. I thought she did a great job pronouncing our client's name probably better than I can. The most important thing on all of that, if you did read all of the pages of the staff report, is that the owner is not going anymore. So, if there was anybody concerned about that. But it surprised me when she said 7 conditions, because the red light a lot more, but the conditions make sense for this site. We were in agreement with
This request is specifically tied to the building.
Okay. I thought so. Great. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely no.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I don't have a whole lot more to add to my presentation. I thought you did a great job. Probably better than I can. And the most important thing on all of that, if you did read all these pages of the staff report, is that the owner is not Prince Mongo anymore. So if there was anybody concerned about that. But it surprised me when she said 7 conditions, because it read like a lot more. But the conditions make sense for this site. We were in agreement with, and we don't have any issues with the conditions. And nothing.
My name is George Jurisky. I live at
No, there's
1426
opposition. I'd like to
Central
reserve the
Avenue.
rest of my time to respond to what
To the property,
Would you be opposed to us tweaking the condition on what streets need to be?
No, that
We'll
that
come
was
back
left
to
over.
that. Make the streets adjacent to it. Yeah.
Mr. Rexdale and I can get together
Central
and
Avenue,
clean that up.
in the Mansfield Arms, Kitty Corner, across the street from the alley.
Yeah, no
We're
problem.
not really represented by those
Okay,
teachers.
then we're gonna, unless there's anybody here else in support, we're gonna stop supporting the opposition.
You didn't show the other half of the story.
And so I
which is really
have,
a residential area.
Horish,
This is a residential neighborhood at the
you'll
edge
give
of
your name and
Central
address
Park.
for the record for us.
In the
My name
past,
is
we
George
have already
Rushdie. I live
experienced
at
groups
1426 Central Avenue,
at this
Kitty
location
Corner
under several
property.
different owners.
Okay.
These were not pleasant to
You just want to tell
say.
the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Our
truth. so-
experience.
I do. Okay, Mr. Horish, share with us.
Never enough
Okay, my name is George Rushdie. I live at 1426 Central Avenue in the Mansfield Arms, Kitty Corner, across the street from the applicant, which were not really represented by those pictures that showed up there. You only showed one half of the story. You didn't show the other half of the story, which is really a residential area. This is a residential neighborhood at the edge of Central Gardens. In the past, we have already experienced groups have attended events at this location under several different owners. These were not pleasant, to say the least. Our experience indicates that there is never enough off-street parking to hold the number of the people who attend these events. So-called off-street parking has in the past been blocked off for vendors, suppliers, staff, and not available for attendees. Valley apartment parking was at times offered and packed alongside residential streets. This caused overflow onto Central Avenue, and the fire department did not use the side streets for their equipment. Double parking was also on Central Avenue. The people who attended other events in the past really had a problem and left the area with being intoxicated, carrying open containers with 7 different kinds of alcohol, left bottles, cans, various containers along the sidewalk. The music, which was supposed to be stopped at 11 o'clock, continued on to 2 o'clock in the morning, causing the police many times to have to come and patrol the area and stop it. People who attended these events, I hate to say, were not the most classy as they urinated or sick, left sexual items along the yard. It was not a very nice sight. We're very fortunate in the past that no one has been shot at that I'm aware of. Today's environment is very different, and it is sad to say that I would expect to see some type of violence as a result of event at this time. People are different now. Security guards have been there at these events, and they still could or would not stop doing dumb things. The recommendations that you have there are interesting, and the question is, who's responsible for ensuring that these recommendations will really be kept? Is it the fire department? Is it the police department? It's too late when you have to call the police. In closing, I have a couple of questions. Will there be adequate restroom facilities? And has a commercial kitchen been installed where we're going to see food trucks as we did in the past? At one point, Ashland Hall was supposed to be a lawyer's office. We did not oppose that. I want to thank you for your attention and the ability to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harishny. Are there any questions? Don't
I have a question.
go anywhere. We're not done with you. I think Ms. Baker had a question
Yes,
for you.
I have a question. You're here and your building has a lot of other people who live in there.
We're a
And
group of 10 homeowners.
so my question is, are you representing those 10
I do.
owners? Okay,
I'm here and speaking for them
okay.
as the
And
Mansfield Arms.
you're officially speaking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What'd you say the address was at Mansfield Arms? I just want to look at
1426 Central Avenue. It's kitty corner to the property.
Okay. I just like looking up to see where it is. Like I understand. And how long have you lived in that area? I know that, we
I've
all know
lived there
about-
over 25 years, my wife and I. We moved in from East Memphis.
Right. So you've seen a lot there. Perfect. Got it. Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Harishny? All right. Thank you much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down. Are there any other people here to speak in opposition on case number 9? All right. And we'll close the opposition and move back to rebuttal for Mr. Bray. And how much time do we have? 10 minutes. If you need, yeah. If you
I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that you asked him how long he had been there, because I was curious as to the events that dated back and the problems. And I'll note what he said. People are different. I think this is a different model for this building and what we're talking about than what went on in the past, especially with one of the previous owners and some of the events that were held. I'm not aware that at that time that they had conditions of approval that shut them down at 11, and I'm just not sure what the circumstances were at that time if they had rules in place to shut them down. But at this time, I think most of those issues that the neighborhood is concerned with are addressed by the conditions of approval. If you read condition 1.1A with the types of events that are allowed, that's not going to be any of the infamous Prince Mongo parties. We're limited to 100 guests at a time. We have 39 parking spaces on the site. That should accommodate everybody on site. If there is any overflow parking, we are working right now with the U Club to get a shared parking agreement with them, as they're sort of directly across the street from us. And to answer his question, yes, we're working on getting the kitchen upgraded to a commercial kitchen level. There's a lot of things that have to be done inside the building, sprinklers and things like that, to get all the way through this process. But this would be a self-contained event center when an event is happening. We would not have food trucks parked in the front. Happy to add that as a condition if we need to, if that's a concern. And I'll be happy to answer your questions.
I'm going to ask him a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Maybe you mentioned that, and I may have been writing something down and missed it, but the gentleman here from Mansfield Arms mentioned the food trucks. would you object to not allowing food trucks or?
No, I'd be fine with that condition added. And that's, yeah, I did address that. We're working on getting the kitchen upgraded to a commercial kitchen so that they have the ability to provide on site. There may still be outside caterers, but yeah, we can make a restriction on food trucks.
And I might as well go ahead and mention the restroom facilities. I assume that.
Yeah, yes, there are plenty.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have elevators? Is there an elevator in the building?
That's a question I can't answer. I don't know. And the architect is out of town today. I want to say yes, but I don't want to. I'm saying yes off of having been in there a while back, and I'm not positive.
Okay.
So you'd be okay with a condition on no food trucks, and we could have like no outdoor restrooms as well, like no porta potties?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Bray.
Thank you.
I assume y'all are ready to discuss. If we could get a motion to approve BOA 23-0109 as conditioned by staff.
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
And, Mr. Chairman, let me clear up. We do have the condition 6B that we need to strike everything after along, where it's both sides of the different streets, and just add Central Avenue to that.
Okay.
And was there a...
Could we add could we add Mansfield north to that next block? Is what I was kind of looking at on the map.
Yeah. We can add that. And then was there discussion about a condition that the variance is null and void if the structure is demolished?
Right.
We would like, yeah, I think that we would like something like that.
Okay. And then...
Null and void if the structure is demolished, like you asked for.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we deleting condition number 1 about the RU4?
If that makes sense to you, I would like that unless there's, it's kind of already there that they can do RU4.
Yeah. Okay, with those 3 amendments, without objection?
Without objection. No food trucks would be on site without objection.
Did we get porta potties in there?
He said, yeah, and no porta potties allowed on the site.
I have one other item. On the weekend, the outdoor music goes to 11. That's kind of late, really, even for a weekend evening outside. Friday and Saturday. Does anyone else have? I might just go to bed earlier or something.
I think it's in line.
Probably the truth, but 11 is probably late enough. Anything past that, yeah, I would think, but 11 is probably.
11 is the normal noise ordinance, correct? So if
Yes.
they're over the noise ordinance, they're in trouble anyway.
Correct.
I don't want to say it, but I'm going to. Is there any discussion of a sunset?
Well, I was wondering if we might want to, put 5 years sunset, and after 5 years, they can come back and have the sunset lifted. But at that point, they will have a track record of not disturbing the neighborhood and so on. So
I'd be
a good
in favor
idea.
of going maybe a little less than 5.
No, I was
Think about
thinking
what
more
we did for
restricted
Rail
too.
Garden.
That 3?
Remember,
2
I think we had
months.
them come back every year. But
How long were you thinking, Carson?
Well, I mean,
I was thinking 2 to 3.
yeah, I was
Is
2
what I was
is
kinda-
perfect, but I remember when obviously it was Prince Mongo, but there were parties going on. I remember that, and it was quite the ordeal. you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Ragsdale.
5 was too much.
Yes, I was just going to clarify who made the motion and the second on this.
The motion, I believe you started with the motion, and
Yeah.
the second,
Was both,
Might have been me.
Okay. We can go back and watch the video. I just wanted to get.
okay. Do we need it, are we going to hear, or do we have 5 people that will hear from Mr. Bray?
And Mr. Chairman, you will have to hear from both parties. if
That's
you
fine.
open, so.
Yeah, we'll give equal time. Okay, I think we have it.
I just wanted to ask if you were going to put a sunset on it, if you could put the sunset on it from the time that we get a certificate of occupancy, because that's going to take a little while. We're not quite there yet. So I don't want to use 9 months of the process.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
Chairman Randy, I know we put the porta potty thing on there, but I'm thinking if he's still working on the building, he has a construction crew there. If there's not an operable restroom, it might need to be tied into the.
Certificate of occupancy, yeah. That makes sense. Mr. Harishny, do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time? We allowed him to say something which opened it back up. Do you have any comments? We get equal time. He didn't really spend a lot of time, but I would be remiss not to ask you.
The only comment that I would have about this time is I resent the opinion that it's consistent with the area, because it is not consistent with the area.
Got it. Understood. Thank you, sir. Okay, so to go back to what we're talking about, do you have, without objection, on the certificate of occupancy on both those porta potties and the sunset?
Yes.
Have we agreed on the length of the sunset?
I thought I heard 2 years.
to the
I
next
think without objection, 2 years. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, I assume y'all are ready to vote. Mr. Ragsdale, if you give us a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Gerlach?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Bostic?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I find the standards of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Chair Rayner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the motion carries as conditioned. Thank you both parties for coming down and speaking with us today. Mr. Ragsdale, will you call our next case?
Item number 12, BOA 2023-112, 528 Baltimore Street.
All right, is the applicant present? We get some opposition? Okay.
12.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, if the opposition and the applicant will come down to the front, so we'll be ready. And if staff could give us a brief report, please, or lengthy report if needed.
Good afternoon, Nicholas Wardrop, DPD. This is a use variance request at 528 Baltimore to allow apartment use in the RU1 district. So here's a location map. We're in the Beltline neighborhood, somewhat southeast of the Liberty Bowl, more or less, and a vicinity map. So a little background information about this case. So they're requesting a use variance to allow multifamily senior living in the RU1 district. In our zoning code, the UDC considers this an apartment use because of the cottage court layout. The BOA already approved this use on the western half of the property about 2 years ago as BOA 2021-57, but this approval expired in June. They never received a building permit. If you open up the staff report, there is about 2 paragraphs of staff commentary on BOA 2021-57 on page 20, the minutes from that meeting on page 26, and the notice of disposition on page 27. So the first thing is that variance has expired because they never received a building permit, but also they have since acquired the eastern half of the subject property, and so have roughly doubled the geographic scope of the project. See the map on page 7 for that. This request is consistent with the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan. Page 23 is where you'll find comp planning's analysis, and we are recommending approval with conditions. So here is a zoning map. You can see the neighborhood. It's in the RU1 district. And the land use map, you'll see it's surrounded mostly by single-family residential, but also some multifamily, including both apartments and duplexes. Here are the site photos. You'll see this home here. The applicant plans to renovate that home. It's not going to be demolished. And then 3 vacant lots. There's some more site photos. An aerial, so we're talking about this entire area in red, so basically all the way from Baltimore to Bunton across the whole block. Here's another aerial, so you'll see the area that was included in BOA 2021-57 is in the pink, and then the subject area of today's case is in red. Here's their site plan. You'll see essentially 10 units across 4 lots, 9 of which will be new, plus the existing house, which they plan to renovate. 1 curb cut along Felix Avenue and 3 off-street parking spaces. Here are some architect's renderings. And here are the staff conclusions. 1, they're requesting use variance to allow an apartment use in the RU1 district. 2, we find no changes which would warrant reconsidering or would undermine the findings the BOA made 2 years ago. And we, 3rd, find that this project will not cause any injury to the surrounding residents or property owners. In addition, we find this project would advance the goals of the UDC and Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan in allowing Memphis seniors to age in place. And so we're therefore recommending approval with 3 conditions. 1, the boilerplate BOA condition. 2, that the curb cut on Felix be the only permitted curb cut. And 3, that trees be planted as they're shown in the architect's renderings. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Question.
All right, question?
On the BOA 2021-57, what did we approve that use for?
So it was the use that's requested, the same use. The BOA also approved a parking variance, which we've determined is not needed in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? All right, seeing now we're going to move to the applicant. Mr. Bray. Mr. Bray, you're already sworn in.
You want to get them?
Yeah, we can, yeah. If you'll give your name and address for the record, sir.
Me?
Yes, sir.
All right.
No, go ahead and give your name and address first.
Reverend William Marler, 158 Martin Street, Memphis, Tennessee, 38111.
And now I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and tell us about this.
Why don't you start?
So, and it was covered in the staff report very well. This was approved back in June of 2021. Reverend Marler here represents a nonprofit, and unfortunately for the nonprofits, sometimes they can't move as fast as conventional does. And so we got to the end of 2 years. He contacted me earlier this year about getting started on it, and we were trying to go as quick as possible, but realized that we were not going to be at a point where we could get a building permit prior to the expiration of that. The good part that happened in the meantime was their ability to acquire the other properties immediately on the east-hand side of this. And so if you go back and look, and I think the old site plan is in the staff report as well, basically this is just a mirror image of that as you go to the east. So we've expanded the site. There is one existing house that we're leaving. That was in the original plan as well. There's significant renovations that are going to take place to that house. And then the rest of them will be new structures that are constructed on the site. So do you have anything you want to add? And otherwise, we'll let the opposition speak.
We're a neighborhood embed. We've been serving the Beltline for 20 years. We do affordable housing. We do blight remediation, and we've enjoyed an 80% drop in crime in 20 years. We track that through the Memphis Police Department, and we know a lot of that is directly attributable to just removing some of the blight. We cook for seniors. Some of our church volunteers every Monday and Thursday for the last 4 years have cooked for a number of seniors in the neighborhood. And one of the issues that we've really seen over the last number of years is the condition of aging in place seniors in the Beltline. A lot of them struggle with an income of $1,000, $1,200 a month. Our more affluent neighbors out in the suburbs, they have to surrender their wealth and their houses, sometimes $200,000 or $300,000 if you want to live in a nice upscale community for aging people. We don't have that kind of a clientele. Our people don't enjoy that kind of an income. So we have to work with roughly $1,000 or so. Now, my dad lived to be 91, and when he was 87, he said, I want you to make sure that I'm able, if at all possible, to die in my home. And I was able, with the help of God, to do that. He didn't have to die in a hospital or a nursing home. He did not have to disconnect from the neighborhood that he lived in. And so that's one of the critical issues here is when people get older and the only option is to move out, it's a terrible thing to have to disconnect from your community. I consider that to be a human issue that we all face in all of our, particularly our more stressed communities in Memphis. So we have to do something about it. I've seen people in the Beltline that died in their homes, and we didn't, nobody knew anything about it because no one was watching over them, and it was only the smell of the house and the postal worker who says there's something wrong with this situation. So we decided to do something about it. And our plan offers people an opportunity. You don't have to disconnect from your neighborhoods. You can live where your friends are. You can have an opportunity to get to know new friends a little bit better. We've designed it so that all of the porches face one another, and that allows people to look and watch after and be a little nosy about their neighbor and what's going on there, and to watch for them. And it also is an added layer of vigilance. We want to keep crime out. You know, when the city needs to protect its most vulnerable people. It's also ADA compliant, so you can get in and out. We've got a little common area in the back where we encourage people to get out and plant and garden and walk and do all of the things that I think a lot of people at this point in their life, if you're poor, you don't have much money, this is a dream. And it's a dream that a lot of people can't even conceive of. So we're trying to do something that a lot of people can't even imagine their life being a beneficiary of this kind of community. Our motivation, we want to do well. We're people of faith. We want to do well by them. And so that's it. Thank you. And I'm humble that you listened to my soapbox deal. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
It's more architectural than anything. Does this honor the current setback for the other residents, or is this are we requesting a new setback front yard? And the reason I asked that question is I'm just looking at one of the renderings, and it might just be a rendering, but it looks like the stairs leading to the entries.
Yeah.
Just come right up to the.
I've got to find the site plan, and then I got to see if I can read one that's on an 8.5 by 11.
16.
Because that's a question I honestly don't recall.
I guess, he said something about stairs.
It's pretty close to that existing house, if that's built where everything else is.
Yeah, it looks like it matches that, and I cannot read that dimension that's on there.
Maybe 15?
It's based on the previous approval, that setback now. But yes, it does match that existing house, because the porch is allowed to encroach into the front yard setback, so the start of the house is right behind the setback line.
And if I can answer, it meets the bulk requirements for townhomes in the RU1 district, this plan does.
Okay.
Of course, we don't have bulk requirements for apartments because they're not allowed in RU1.
Other questions before we move on to additional support?
I just wanted to talk about that again for a minute, because these really aren't townhomes. So I'm just wondering if maybe that should be spelled out if we want it to be a 15-foot setback and that's not permitted. It might be, because if it's 15 for townhomes, but these are really not townhomes, are they? Townhomes are attached. So I'm just suggesting that we spell it out in the conditions. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
If I may, I think that would be covered in the condition 1 that says any deviation from the site plan submitted. So that would cover all manner of sins on that.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I have Mr. Buchanan. Or Mrs. I'm sorry.
Surprise.
Yeah. Who knew? If you'll give your name and address for the record.
Sure, I'm TK Buchanan, and my address is 3655 Southern Avenue. I just moved offices.
Okay.
And that's in Memphis 38111.
Great. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. Go ahead.
Well, this is my 28th year of appearing before you, and this is the first time I've ever supported a development, so I'm surprised balloons aren't dropping for this occasion.
We
But
ordered them and they were late.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been consulting with Jacob's Ladder CDC formally since about 2003, and we've worked really hard on these plans for senior cozy cottages. I am a crime prevention specialist, certified in crime prevention through environmental design. I actually have the highest rank in the city for that task. And it's been my honor to apply my craft to this project. And I'll do everything I can to continue to make public safety a priority 1 when we develop anything. What I love the most about this project is what Bill's already hit on, the fact that it keeps people connected in their community, so I won't belabor that point. I love the fact that we're using alternative materials and mediums to get construction costs down and to make them more energy efficient. I love the fact that when you drive by, you will see that it doesn't look like multifamily at all. It's a sort of a misnomer. It will integrate in with the smallscape of the small houses that are already there. There's a little bit of an urban design spin on some of the architecture and some of the color choices, but I think that it is absolutely the perfect plan for this particular spot. And moreover, I'd like us to come back and propose doing this with more opportunity in the Beltline to create a whole village of independent living for seniors who never want to leave that spot. I'm not a senior, but I am a native 38111 girl, and I never want to leave this spot. I don't want to leave my home in Sherwood Forest, and when I can no longer take care of my home, I'll be looking for something like senior cozy cottages, and I hope that they're there and available to me when that happens. Thank you for your time and your service.
Great. Are there any questions for Ms. Buchanan? All right. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the opposition. And I have some cards here, but is George Boyington here? There you go.
Good afternoon. I'm George Boyington from the Shelby County Assessor's Office. I oversee government affairs there at 1075 Mullins Station Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38134. Our concern stems from the fact that the adjacent property owners, a lot of them just found out about the development. They've reached out to our office. They've expressed some concerns regarding the valuation and use of their property. And of course, pursuant to the Tennessee Constitution, we're supposed to track that in value according to market conditions. We haven't had an opportunity to do that. We believe that the CDC itself and its stakeholders may be it happens sometimes, it's not an indictment on them, but it's just a statement, that they may be participating in an inflation or manipulation of market conditions by obtaining and purchasing properties within the given area, constituting in and of itself a de facto larger scale development by getting the adjacent parcels. So we need to figure that out, and we suspect that they're doing that through bulk sales and bulk holdings. We also feel that we would like to conduct a review of the proposed development to determine how exactly it may affect property values, how it may affect the best and highest use going forward, and how we may apply that to the mass appraisal landscape in our CAMA system, computer-aided mass assessment, within the layover of that entire district. We'd like to ask for additional time to do that, and with the concerns that were brought to our attention, we feel that that's necessary. So we'd like to oppose any approval today and ask for a further opportunity to come back with a report on what exactly this would do to adjacent property owners with regards to market conditions and the overall scheme that might be in effect today. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? Hold on one second.
Yeah, can you tell me again what office you're with?
Yes, Shelby County Assessor of Property.
The Assessor's Office.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I did have a question on that proposal or the request for addition or hold. How much time are you assuming that it will take to gather those decisions and information regarding bulk sales and the claims?
We'd like a minimum of 60 days if we could have it. Of course, we would defer to whatever the body might be able to provide to us, but we'd ask for 60 days at least.
I mean, I want to be deferential to the assessor's office, but I would push for 30, I think, for a hold. I understand to restate what you said to you is like, hey, we just have some questions. We're not saying anything's been done wrong. We've just been asked to investigate this.
That's exactly it, yes, sir.
Okay.
And we would, of course, do our due diligence to provide that report to this body and to constituents who requested it. So we make sure that, our findings were transparent as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that is one. I have another person here in opposition if they would like to speak, or two people. Lacey and Ryan Lambert. Or Lacey Lambert
Lois
Ryan.
Lambert
Lois,
Ryan.
okay, thank you. If you'll give your name and address for the record.
Lois Lambert Ryan, 3175 Cotton Plant Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38119. I am the owner of the property at 536 Baltimore, 38111, which is contiguous next door to this development.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ryan.
I just received notification on yesterday that this approval that was granted a couple of years ago, this variance was not fulfilled. I was opposed to it at that time. This is air property that was left to me in trust to my daughter from my parents. I have major concerns. At the last setting, when there were even fewer houses that were proposed to be developed, it was not enough room for the cars to park behind this development. They could only come in one way and leave out the other way. Now there's 10 units. I think before it was less than that, because there's another piece of property this developer has obtained. There was a pertinent question asked by the panel. What is the set off in the front? So I'll start at the front of the houses that are on a corner. These are senior citizens whose doors will be on the sidewalk. In an efficiency cottage. I think the only walls will be the toilets. It's an efficiency. Now there will be 10 of those. They propose this garden nesting area for bonding. There's not enough spaces for the 10 cars for those 10 units to park. That'll be on my fence line. The idea that it's a wonderful place for a development for senior citizens, I think that was just folly. Nobody's moving to the belt line to be around other folks. That's not like them. The statement that, oh, this has been, I've been working in this community for all these years. Well, what's been going on in this community is that the person that's asking for this variance works with another person, and if you look at the pictures, you'll see all the vacant lots. There's a last time I was here, I don't have my preparation today because I got this notice yesterday evening in the mail, when I got it at the mail, that there are probably about, it was 80 2 years ago. It was about 80. He cuts the grass for whoever owns all those 80 vacant lots. You could stand in my front yard of the property I own, or the vacant lot that he owns on the other side of my property, or the developer owns on the other side of my property, and look, you almost see Coca-Cola. Almost see Coca-Cola. And if you know where Coca-Cola is on Hollywood, you have an idea of where this is. Previously, the city talked about revamping this area and building homes for first responders or school teachers to develop the Beltline area. There are no old people in the Beltline. Oh, we're going to make this a senior citizen folly. No, it's not. It's a Section 8 folly. The apartments in front of the property my mother and stepfather owned have been remodeled 4 or 5 times. It's a Section 8 bed. It's a lower income bed. So to say, oh, this is the kind of place I want to live, that sounds real good. My concern at this point in time is the fact that, one, it will affect my property values to have 10 rental units next to it. And no matter how small or how large, or what they think of my property values, my quarter is my quarter. This is heir property left to my daughter. I have a wonderful tenant. The city upgraded my property twice to make it handicap accessible for my parents. Yes, it was one of the first houses through the housing in Memphis Housing Development to be rehabbed in that zip code. I say all of this just to say, if you want to build some decent housing for senior citizens, don't build 10 Kwanzaa huts. Don't placate and say, oh, this is going to be wonderful and I want to move there. This is a bad zip code. This is not going to enhance or make it grow. It's not going to enhance those that have been there for all these years, that are homeowners. It's not going to enhance property values or values of the homes. And my apologies, I don't have prepared notes. That's the worst thing for me to get up here on this microphone. And I got here late because I had other business. But to say you're helping somebody, you're not helping a senior citizen when you put their front door on the sidewalk and they don't have anywhere even to park their cars. So he got a chance to buy the lot behind it. And all he did was not put parking, put another house or two. And we still have, I don't know where he's gonna plant a tree, because it's such a narrow, small space. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Lambert-Ryan? Right, thank you, ma'am. Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, let me add, just so what use of that property would you think would be more appropriate? I mean, it's residential. What kind of use would you think would be more appropriate?
I do not believe it is suitable for 10 Kwanzaa huts, these cottages. It is not suitable. The frontage that's being used does not give a fair walk out for a senior citizen. The fact that the city already cut the curb, that's because my mother was handicapped, all right? As was the lady who lived across the street, that's heir property. So I really believe it should be kept as single family, residential. It was a church there, so I'm not sure about what it was initially zoned for, but I think it needs to be something that will enhance Beltline. It's not for senior citizens. The idea, oh, the senior citizens get to stay in their neighborhoods. They're not in those neighborhoods. The real concern I have is something's going to be built, and eventually it's just going to deteriorate. But it was residential. I think it was a church, and I think zoning for residential, but not 10 houses.
Okay.
Not 10 houses.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, other questions? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so very much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate you. Is there anybody else here to speak in opposition? Not, we'll move back to the applicant. Have a rebuttal.
Oh, they have 7 minutes.
7 minutes for rebuttal. And I know I'd like to hear about the hold that was requested.
Yeah, to that, and I never did get a clear number on how many complaints he's had. I guess my response to that would be that this is not a new case in front of you guys. I mean this was up 2 years ago, and if there was some concern that they wanted to look in and do research, they've had 2 years to do that. So we're not breaking new ground here. I mean, we have expanded the project, but you guys, this board saw this same project 2 years ago and felt like it was worthy for the area. And as the staff report says, staff doesn't feel that anything has changed over that amount of time. But obviously, we'll defer to the board if you guys want to grant a hold. I like 30 days better than 60, if that's the direction you're going. There was some concern made about the parking. The previous application, when it came through, and I'm not the one that brought that one through, had requested a variance in parking due to the size. We don't believe that all of the residents in here will have cars. That's where the variance came from. Staff felt like with changes to the code that was no longer needed for variance, that as we have it shown, that it would be in compliance with the UDC. And so that's why parking is not specifically mentioned in this time. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer your questions. Did you want to say anything else? Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Baker.
This all brought a question up in my mind. We've been talking about it being homes for the elderly, and it being homes for the elderly, to me, makes it work, the small size, the lack of parking spaces, and so on. I don't see anything on this staff report that limits it to homes for the elderly. So I guess I'm asking the question about whether we should add that. Yeah.
We would not object to a condition that age restricted it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Quick question. Is this part of a larger development? Meaning, is this like the first of multiple kind of developments in the area? I was just looking at kind of a parcel map. And just wondering, was this part of like the first phase of kind of a multi-development on these properties?
I guess the answer to your question is no, but that doesn't mean that if this weren't successful, that we would not look at other properties at some point in the future. But there's not another phase. Okay. We don't have another one in the pipeline that's coming towards you.
Okay. Any other questions?
And I guess just to confirm, because obviously it looks like I wasn't here for the initial approval of the first BOA variance, the number of units, has that increased since the first BOA?
I believe the original was for 5 and, or maybe, no, I guess 6. Well, but the existing house was in there as well, right? So, okay, so 5 on the original and the 3 parking. And basically it just doubled in size.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you both very much, gentlemen. If we could get a motion from the board to approve BOA 2023-112 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
Second.
Brett. Okay. Any discussion? I'll point out, anybody have issues with doing a 30-day hold on this to let the assessor
No.
investigate?
No.
Okay, so would someone want to make a procedural motion for a 30-day hold?
I move for a 30-day hold.
Okay.
I would like to add the condition limiting the occupancy to elderly.
But if we're only talking about the hold
Residents.
right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We're looking for a second for the hold.
Second.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion on the hold, but duly noted on the, I was running the same thing.
just thinking the whole.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, then with that, I assume y'all ready to vote. All those in favor of a 30-day hold signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we're held for 30 days. Thank you all for coming down. Mr. Ragsdale, if you can call, I think we have one more case? No, I'm sorry, two more cases. I'm sorry, two more.
And actually, we're going to backtrack a little bit to the consent agenda. Item number 2, the applicant is actually here and wanted to discuss some conditions. So if the board would be open to that, then we would need a vote, a motion second and a vote to hear case number 2 to let the applicant address their concerns.
I would not have a problem with that, but I'd like to put it at the very end.
I was going to say.
That's a good idea.
So not to interrupt our flow right now for something when somebody was not quite here.
I know, right?
But I think we'll be happy to hear it, just so they know.
Right, yes.
No, 13 was a
Okay.
wasn't it?
Then our next case is item number 15, BOA 2023-115, 610 North Germantown Parkway.
Okay, is the applicant present?
Yes, and then I'll.
Goodness, you are busy today. Is there any opposition here today for agenda item 15? Okay. All right, if we could get a staff report on this. I know this one staff is recommending rejection on. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Cobbs. I know you're not.
Thank you. Kendra Cobbs, DPD. I'm sorry, I was trying to pull up the report.
You're fine.
Are we doing case number 115 or?
That is going to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. This is a variance request. The applicant is Taco Cat of Memphis and represented by David Bray. And it is a variance request pursuant to subsection 329F to allow an encroachment into a platted setback. So this is located in the Cordova area. And looking at the vicinity map, these are the properties where notices were sent. I believe it was like 32 properties where notices were sent, property owners. Looking at the zoning map, this is zone commercial mixed use 2, CMU 2. There is a BOA case that also comes up for that location. However, it was withdrawn. So it is CMU 2 zoning for that site. And this is a commercial area noted by all the red that is on the land use map. And so here are some photos of the site. The image to the left is an overall image of what is on the site. So there is an Exxon gas station that is the principal use. And next to that is a Checkers fast food restaurant. And then the image to the right is more close up, and you can see the Taco Cat food truck and the Toucan the 2 temporary canopies, which are the focus of the request. And so these are just other images of the site looking from the northeast and also the southeast from North Germantown Parkway. This is an aerial of the location. So you can see this is the Exxon gas station, and this is the Checkers drive-through restaurant. This is an existing gas canopy, a significant size gas canopy, actually. And then I believe right here is the food truck and the canopies. And so the reason for the variance request is that this site is mandated by an existing final plat. So this is actually a site plan of what's proposed. So once again, we have the Exxon gas station, and this is the Checkers restaurant. This is the food truck. And then these are the canopies that are proposed to be made permanent. And this is actually the final plat. And you can see along here, along North Germantown Parkway, is the 30-foot building setback line. So to conclude, the applicant is requesting to make temporary canopy structures permanent. And these would be for a food truck that was permitted on site back in 2022. It was permitted by the health department and according to the letter of intent from our construction enforcement office. The letter of intent states that construction code enforcement cited the food truck owner for setback violations of the canopies that were anchored alongside North Germantown Parkway. Due to the high traffic volume of this site being at an intersection and also an existing gas station, the drive-through restaurant, and that this is a food truck, which is temporary in nature, staff does not feel that making the canopies permanent are warranted. So granting of this variance will cause substantial detriment to the public good. It will substantially impair the intent and purpose of the adopted Unified Development Code. It will be injurious to the neighborhood and the general welfare, and it will not be in harmony with the purpose and intent of our UDC. So staff is recommending rejection. However, if approved, the following condition is recommended: that any change from the site plan would have to be reviewed, would have to come back and be reviewed by Division of Planning and Development. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
I have a question. Ms. Cobbs, you mentioned that the food trucks are temporary, and so the cover is temporary. What do you mean by temporary? Is there a length of time that they're permitted for? I mean, when do they end?
Well, when I say temporary, I just mean that the food truck is mobile, so it's not permanently approved for that site. But they did get a permit allowing it to be there.
It's not like they have to move at any particular time. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know if the food truck owner is leasing that section of the property, or are they just permitted by some special permit?
I'm not exactly sure how the permitting goes, but they would have had to obtain permission from the private property owner in order to be at that site. And there is a permitting process that food trucks have to follow through the health department and also following state code. So.
Okay, other questions of staff? All right, Mr. Bray, do you want to come talk to us about this?
Be happy to. And I didn't catch it when you asked. Was there any opposition, or are there any?
There was
cards
no
on
opposition.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Mr. Ragsdale and I had a long conversation about this case yesterday, getting down to the tiniest of details on it. Okay, So if you drive by this site on your way home tonight, and I will because it's right around the corner from where I live, those canopies are there. Those canopies are permitted as long as they are temporary canopies. And so when the food truck, which to answer your question regarding the food, he's got a lease with the owner to operate in that location. So when the food truck set up there and they set up the canopies were permissible. This particular food truck, as well as several of the others along that Germantown Parkway corridor, experienced the high wind events back in the spring. And I think we had actually 2 high wind events in about 3 weeks. If your canopy didn't get blown over in the first one, it got blown over in the second one. A lot of these guys came in and decided that they did not want that happening again. It was bad for the business they were leasing from. It was bad for their customers. It was bad for other people in the parking lot. And so they wanted to anchor them. The minute they anchor them, it changes from a temporary structure as far as code enforcement is concerned to a permanent structure. So, as I said, those canopies are permissible without the anchoring. So you drive by there tomorrow, if you guys turn this down and don't approve the canopies, they'll still be there. We just can't anchor them to the ground so that when a wind event comes through, we can't keep them from blowing over. That's why we're here today. And how we deal with this, food trucks are new, and trying to figure out how we navigate all this is a problem. One of the things we discussed, was what happens if the food truck goes away and the canopy stays, or it becomes a more elaborate canopy. And, if I'm asking you guys, if we can put conditions on it that those canopies are just approved by this board for the operation of that food truck or another food truck in that exact location, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with no more detail being added. You couldn't come in, as you see in some of the northern cities where they put in, walls on 2 sides of these to create wind breaks. If we leave them just the way they are, I would be okay with that. We're at a point where literally the issue is whether or not we put anchoring bolts in the legs of these canopies, and therefore create a permanent structure according to code, and that's why the owner got cited. So at the moment, he's taken out the anchoring; it's not anchored, so it's perfectly legal today. But what he would like to do is anchor them so that there's not an issue next time we have a wind event. And then getting into the technicalities, but I think it matters because I think it matters when we ask for a variance, how much of a variance we're asking for. If you go to page 11 in the staff report and look at that, this is one of those old setbacks. That 30-foot was platted in the original approval of this site. So under our UDC now, if the plat did not reference this as a 30-foot setback, it would be a 20-foot setback. One of the canopies would not even be in that 20-foot setback, and the other one would only be in by about 4.2 feet. So if you're looking at a 20-foot, which normally is what we'd be looking at in CMU1 now.
So these canopies in nature, I mean, they're pretty permanent as far as them being there every day, correct? Like
they're there every day.
Okay.
If you drive by tonight, they'll be there. If you drive by next week, they'll be there.
So it's really
the question is, will they have anchoring bolts?
Yeah. So it's really kind of pragmatics about.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Bray, I've got a question. I'm looking at the picture here just because it's a heavily trafficked site. So right in front of the food truck, the last 2 support columns for the gas canopy don't have pumps on them. Is there a reason why they don't just use those, set up tables under those?
I think that's temporary in nature. I think those pumps are coming back.
I would assume they probably can't get them back because whenever they built this Checkers, which is crazy that they built it behind it, but they got to have I guess they do have they could turn immediately left. But anyway, I was just looking at it, that's anchored. Right. It's right in front of the food truck, so.
That might be a possibility.
Yeah.
I would assume that they have the right for that canopy and those pumps, so I would assume they're probably coming back.
Got it.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If the canopies are anchored, can they be removed, or what's required for them to be removed if the food truck decided to, if it went out of business or moved, what would be the requirement? What would be required to remove the?
It would just be removing the anchors and then taking down the canopies.
All right, so it wouldn't be any destruction to the pavement of the property or anything.
You say it would not be construction to the pavement? Excuse my ignorance, but help me understand when you say anchoring, what do you mean? I was envisioning something being driven into the ground, a stake or something.
Yeah, it's basically
driven
like
to
a
the ground.
screw into the ground. So, I mean, yeah, it would not tear up a significant amount of the pavement.
It can be patched relatively
it'd be
easy.
patched.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So they can't do that without getting approval? They can't?
It changes it from temporary. It's legal. So temporary, they could literally be all the way up to the back of the sidewalk because it's a temporary structure. And I'm not sure how that works either. So but under our rules, code enforcement doesn't check it if it's a temporary structure.
I have one other question. The lease with the principal use, I'm assuming that they're aware of all this and have no objection to it?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't see me personally, to your point, if it was tied to the food truck, meaning whatever happens to the food truck affects what happens to the canopy. So
yeah, we would be agreeable that this variance would no longer be applicable if the food truck changes its lease, moves location, goes to the Bank of Bartlett across the street.
Is this a utility easement or just a kind of a setback?
It's a platted building setback. So there's a 30-foot setback from Germantown Road along this stretch on that plat.
Mr. Ragsdale, if we wanted to have some sort of limitation, we would have to tie it to a food truck, not this food truck, correct? Because that needs to be tied to the use of the land, not the user of the land.
Well, you could tie it to this specific food truck if you want.
Oh, we could, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So would it be a temporary structure if you just had it held with sandbags? I'm just curious, like the rule on that.
That I'm not sure. I guess that would still be temporary.
Yeah. Okay. All right, any other questions, thoughts? I assume you're ready to discuss. Thank you so much. If we could get a motion to approve BOA 2023-0115 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
Second.
And second. Any discussion?
I don't see a huge issue with allowing it, given it's pretty much permanent in location, in use, and it's really just a matter of whether or not it's considered permanent by way of anchorage. So I'm not opposed to allowing it to be attached, like we said, to the food truck itself. And if that food truck leaves or go out of business, or for any reason someone, that setback needs to be done to that setback for public use purposes, that it comes down. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I don't know how I feel about it. Food trucks moved, and they don't move anymore. They're just temporary kitchens set up in a parking lot, and they don't move. And I know we've allowed some, but that's usually been when they have the whole lot or a huge lot. This just seems, I know the food, I've never been to the food truck. I've always liked the name because it was a palindrome, but it just seems so busy right there.
Yeah, it's busy.
Which is, I guess, a great place for a food truck, but also an annoying place for a food truck if you're not getting food. So I don't know. I really don't know what to think about it.
Well, I guess my point to that is, regardless of what we vote on, that food truck's going to be there every day. So it's really, in my mind, I look at it as more of a safety issue as opposed to an allowance of a food truck being there. I mean, that's a whole different discussion if we think a food truck is appropriate permanently in that location. But it's going to be there regardless, so it might as well be, in my mind, anchored properly.
I mean, you're saying let's use logic. Like what's actually happening there, you know? And we do that all the time. We're like, well, this is what it is. Let's make it at least work if it's going to look the same. I mean, I hear you. Other thoughts?
I think I'm on the fence with you, Chair, in that it's being used, it's there, but should they need to uproot? My fear is when that food truck is gone and we get some other food trucks that's not as nicely kept, not as, a particular type of patrons that would keep it up and keep it nice. We're looking at a structure here that's going to be sitting there and could be,
a brand new temporary canopy looks pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah, then a permanent one that doesn't, coincide with, because to my point, once they see that there, we know things grow. They'll be put inside and up or dead, and then, it become more like an outdoor restaurant on top of everything else. So I think I'm just, they have a solution, not maybe the best for what they're wanting to do, but they can use it. But to fix it to the property and they drive off tomorrow, we're stuck with some canopies and, who knows, if they break their lease and they get off the property or whatever, then we're talking about another whole fight for someone to get there. So it just will sit there, to me, vacant, than if we can pack it up and take it with us, so.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to put a permanent restaurant there with an outdoor patio, they couldn't.
Right.
Like, and they basically have a permanent restaurant there with an outdoor patio.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I don't even know if the food truck's got gas in it. I mean,
Maybe it's fixed with sandbags and bricks.
Well, I have a question. It's just my ignorance about leases. There isn't any way that our approval would in any way override the lease, right?
Well, especially they can still use it. They can have they've had the temporary canopies for, I would assume, years. That truck's been there for a bit.
Could we, I'm just throwing an idea out there, I mean, could we allow it to be permanent as just for this one food truck? And so when that food truck's not there anymore, then they'd have to remove it?
Yeah, Mr. Ragsdale said we could. We could tie it to this particular truck.
Yeah.
But my concern, Mr. Bruce, is that that sets precedent. So if we say yes to them, I could come with my food truck and you and, the next person. And then, albeit we may be good, the fourth food truck may not be a good neighbor, so.
But I think every decision we make sets a precedent to some degree, and we make decisions that kind of go against the UDC purpose. I mean, that's the only reason they come to us, because it's not allowed by default. And I don't think we can let that tie into what makes sense for one particular location. Even if, somebody else comes along with a similar case, with a similar argument, I mean, maybe we look at that one as well specifically, but I don't know. I think every decision we make, somebody can come back and say, well, you did the same thing for that lot. But it's not, it's our decisions are made specifically for that specific property.
So would y'all like a friendly amendment without objection to limit it to this particular actual food truck added?
Yes, definitely.
Without objection, we'll add that condition.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would tie it to this truck. I mean, the owner or the operator might change, but if this truck, we could do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I would think it'd have to be, that actual piece of machinery truck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Taco Cat.
Not even that. I mean, they could paint it, but it'd be that particular food truck kitchen that's there, whatever the VIN number is or something like that. Okay. So with that objection, we'll add that. I think I'm still voting no, but I at least want that in there.
Can I ask one more question to the representative, Mr. Bray?
Yeah, we'll have to open it back up, which is just him. We need 5 yeses to talk to Mr. Bray. So need 2 more. Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Just one question, just to make sure I'm understanding the anchorage. We're not talking about encasing this into like a bed of like a concrete footing or anything. We're just talking about, or how?
Correct. You won't notice any difference in the poles the way they are today. The anchorage just goes through the footing of the poles. But no, we're not talking about like new lamp post and, you know, a 24-inch concrete diameter. No, sir.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure because that makes it even more of a semi-temporary solution to me. Okay, thank you.
But does our variance limit them from building something more temporary as a canopy? Could they put in light poles and a canopy on it as long as it was in this configuration and shape?
They can.
Well, I think the question was about how it's anchored. So I don't believe that we are limiting how it's anchored, but I think they couldn't put in, you know, like additional structures like light poles or anything like that without some approval. But
could they build a wooden structure, like an open air wooden structure under this variance? So it's not a tent anymore, like we're kind of seeing. It's like, seems like they could.
Right, they could apply for a minor modification to that. I guess we would have to look exactly at the site plan, proposed canopy structures with the building setback. So there's no real
definition of the canopy. That's what I was.
And we don't have any other conditions that would limit that.
Okay. Could we limit the permanent attachment being limited strictly to the existing enclosure? Only that being permanently affixed, no furniture, nothing additional to be permanently affixed, yeah.
So
I just want to ask a question and make sure I'm looking at this right. The only thing before us is the encroachment into the platted setback. Is that right? Nothing else?
The encroachment that is not permitted if the structure is made permanent.
And so, yeah, and so it's just the fact that it's if they weren't encroaching into the platted setback, they could make it permanent and we wouldn't have anything to say about it. Is that true?
They would still.
It would still require a permit, yes,
yeah. But no Board of Adjustment approval. That's the point I'm saying. It's just the.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
For this particular case, because there's a final plat that says that, you know, you have to build so far, you know, have a setback that's so far, and this is beyond that. That's why this is being heard.
No, we allow encroachments of porches and steps into a setback, and those are pretty permanent. So I guess my additional question would be: is this even considered a building per se? I mean, what makes these conditions differently that certain things that's part of a structure can encroach into a setback? That might be a whole different conversation. I guess the more I think about it, the more it doesn't feel like a building encroachment. It's just more.
But if you were building a separate porch, not attached to your house in your front yard, that would need a variance. It's the fact that it's attached to the house that's behind the setback
gives you a variance.
Is what gives you that right, with the porches and overhangs like you're referring to.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody want to discuss further? Y'all ready to vote?
I think it was suggested that we put some restrictions on the type of canopy that they can use. we need to figure out how we're going to word that. What do those restrictions look like?
Are we restricting it strictly to, I thought we were restricting it to this canopy in question, like the one that's actually
Well, yeah, okay.
permanently, I mean, temporarily on site. That one, yeah.
So they could not tear down and rebuild this canopy if it were destroyed. Is that correct?
Would not be able to. That's correct.
Well, I would say that as long as it's the same type of canopy, they couldn't, as, you know.
So instead of this canopy, a canopy of similar type and style is the way you would rather.
Be what we would. Yeah, so if they did come out and build a wooden structure, you know, try to do that, then that's where, you know, would not be allowed.
So the condition would be this variance is limited to the similar type and style to the canopies located on site on September 27, 2023.
We can come up with something to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say style and probably footprint, because you don't want it to get bigger.
Footprints on the site plan.
Okay.
So I think I think we're good on that.
Okay.
Mr. Rowling, he looked at me. Is that did you have a question about that?
The legal wheels are
Okay,
turning.
any other thoughts before we vote? All right, if you'll give us a roll call, please, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Ms. Bostic?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Jones?
No. I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 will not be met and will be duly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Chair Ring?
No.
Okay, we have 6 yes, 2 no. Motion.
Right, motion carries. So you've been approved as conditioned. Thank you, Mr. Bray. Thank you. All right, we have our next case, but I think we have a lot of people waiting on. Thank y'all for being patient. If you'll go ahead and call that case, Mr. Secretary.
Item number 16, BOA 2023-116, 375 Stonewall Street.
Okay, if the applicant will come forward. And then I know we have opposition, so y'all can just stay where you are. And then I'm going to ask that
Good afternoon, Board. Justin Harris, DPD.
Yes, if you'll give us a brief staff report, Mr. Harris, or a full staff report.
So this is case BOA 2023-0116. The applicant requests a variance from item 4.52C1D to allow for the building of a driveway. This is just some general information. The location is 375 Stonewall Street. The owner applicant is Miss Cindy Pham. The existing zoning is residential single-family R10. The location, as you can see with the purple dot, is located within the Evergreen Historical District.
Hold on, wait a minute. Evergreen.
This is an aerial view of the property outlined in yellow.
Yeah.
The zoning map, the existing zoning is residential R10. The surrounding zoning is North R6, East R10, South R10, and West R6. And this is the property highlighted in yellow, as you can see. The property within the pink star, as you can see, is surrounded by single-family residential with the mixed use close by. Here are some site photos of the property. The applicant began the construction of the driveway, but has not laid concrete yet. This is the site plan. And in conclusion, the applicant is seeking relief from section 4.52C of the UDC to allow the construction of a front yard parking pad. There is no hardship or practical difficulty presented by the applicant that justifies approving this variance. The staff recommends rejection. However, if approved, staff recommends the following conditions. Condition number 1, driveway shall be no wider than 10 feet and extend past the front building wall. Number 2, at least one type A tree. You can see UDC subsection 4.69C for the pre-approved trees. They must be installed. if there are overhead power lines, a type C tree must be installed. The required tree should be within 6 feet of the sidewalk. Any change or deviation from the site plan upon the determination of the zoning administrator shall be submitted to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval, or administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions about the board.
Ms. Baker.
Yes, my question is I'm looking at this photograph of the building on page 8, and is that extension of the building there, does that block the further extension of that drive?
Are you talking about the extension of the?
Yeah, can you show that photo that's on page 8 of the staff report? There it is. Go back to that one. Yeah. Zoom in a little bit if you can. You can see that extension of the building back there. My question is it just an illusion by me looking at this picture and I can't tell from the site plan, but is it possible for that drive to get past the house?
There seems the extension seems to be of the building seems to be blocking it, but I'd like to refer the question to the zoning administrator.
Sure, yeah, and I think what we have conditioned would be only extending it 10 feet beyond that, the main front portion of the house. And that's the second portion you're looking at is an extension of the home. So there is about 10 feet there that it could go back further, but it would still be in front of the home.
Great, any other questions? I have a question. There's other parking already on site at this house, correct?
Yes, sir. There's street parking that the applicant uses.
Okay.
And there is also the alley and a garage in the back with a parking pad. Right.
It's single family, the house? Okay. Okay, any other questions of staff before we move to the applicant? Oh, and how many other, in the general area, I see a few driveways that go to the back. Do we have many just parking pads like this in the area that we know of?
I actually live near here. I think there are several driveways that go to the back, but as far as any that are in the front yard, there may be a couple, but very few.
Not a standard feature.
I can't even think of one.
Okay.
I have another question. This driveway, is it a replacement for a driveway that was already there, or is it a brand-new driveway?
I think it's brand new.
It's a
Brand-new driveway. Okay.
Okay.
And new curb, well, and I don't think they even have the curb. Yeah, they don't even have the curb cut right now, so.
Okay, any other questions before we move to the applicant? All right, the applicant will come forward. Is the applicant?
It appears they either didn't want to wait or they're not here.
Okay. All right, is there any opposition to this case that wishes to speak? Okay. I assume, well, let's discuss. And then we can decide what to do. Usually if the applicant's not here, we will hold the case automatically. And I would be, well, let's just see, let's get a motion to approve BOA 2023-116.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so I would be inclined not to allow a drive. So I think that we might want to do a procedural motion to hold this case until next month since they're not here to give an argument for us. Is there a motion for a hold?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion of a hold?
I'm fine with the hold.
Okay. We have one in favor. If, would you, well, all those in favor of hold signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're going to hold that for 30 days. Now, I think, sorry, I gave y'all I got mixed up on my cases, and now we're to the case that I think we have people waiting on, so sorry for the false sense of we're almost there, but here we are finally, I think. So, Mr. Rags, if you'll call that case for us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's BOA 2023-119, 1663 Autumn Avenue. And I want to note that this is a unique application. It's for a significant neighborhood structure, originally conditional use permit. We've only had, I think, 2 others. One was a very similar case back in 2013. Another church that was submitted as first it was submitted as a rezoning, and then they changed that to a significant neighborhood structure application. However, the board, it was strictly apartments. The board in that case ended up just approving a use variance because it had no other uses. This has the bakery retail, which is different from that. But I think for clarity, what we would do is the board would vote on a straight use variance for this, which would accommodate various uses, but the 2 uses that are submitted are the apartments and the retail bakery.
Okay, thank you very much. I know the applicant just came forward, I believe. I know we have some opposition, so what we're going to do first is get a staff report on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aisha Penzas with the Division of Planning and Development. Item before you is BOA 2023-119. Request is for a significant neighborhood structure conditional use permit for a multifamily apartment and bakery retail at 1663 Autumn Avenue. Location map shows the approximate location of the subject property in Midtown, and vicinity map shows the subject property highlighted in yellow and properties within the 500 feet radius of the subject property, owners of which received a public notice of this application. Property is an existing vacant church in an R6 zoning district and an Evergreen Historic District. Land use map shows the surrounding area consisting of single-family and multifamily residential, and there's also institutional use within the 500 feet radius of the subject property. Here are some site photos showing the subject property, front facade of the church, view from Autumn looking south, front and right side facades of the church, view from intersection of Autumn and Dickinson Street. And here is the right facade view from Dickinson and the rear right corner of the church, again, view from Dickinson Street. Site plan shows the existing vacant church and proposed parking arrangement with 13 parking spaces, on-street parking spaces along Dickinson and Autumn Avenue. Proposed 60-degree angle parking arrangement along Dickinson utilizes the 40-foot wide Dickinson and an additional 5.5 foot of the subject property to accommodate 4.5 foot wide sidewalk, 7.5 foot wide angled parking spaces, 10 foot wide north and southbound traffic lanes, each 10 foot wide, and an 8 foot wide parking lane, parallel parking lane along the west side of Dickinson Street. This parking arrangement was reviewed and preliminarily approved by the traffic engineering. Applicant is proposing significant neighborhood structure conditional use permit for multifamily apartment and bakery retail uses at this historic late Gothic revival style church, which was built in 1922. This structure is also considered as a contributing structure to Evergreen National Register District. The property has been vacant since mid-2000s, and currently the structure has a ground floor area of 10,678 square feet. Applicant is proposing 10 units, 6 studio units, 2 one-bedroom units, and 2 two-bedroom units at the main floor of the structure, and bakery retail at the lower level of the structure. Density analysis suggests that the proposed density is 38.46 units per acre, which is over 5 times more than the conventional single-family home density and 2.5 times more than the cottage-style home density in an R6 district. Per UDC section 4.5.3, minimums of 16 parking spaces are required for the proposed uses and apartments, 14 for apartments, and 2 for bakery retail. Staff recommendations include 10 bicycle parking spaces to be provided on-site to waive 2 of these required parking spaces per subsection 4.5.3E, and staff believes that there is substantial amount of on-street parking spaces within the same block of Dickinson Street to accommodate the remaining 1 required parking space. With that, staff recommends approval of the request with 8 conditions as listed in the staff report, page 18. And this concludes my staff presentation. Thank you.
Since we have a large group here, do you mind running through out loud those conditions for us?
Of course.
Okay.
So the first condition is to allow the requested residential multifamily apartment and commercial retail sales and services, bakery and retail uses, and associated accessory uses, excluding outdoor kitchen, automatic one-bay car wash facility, and drive-through facility. Condition number 2, additions to the existing structure that intend to expand the existing living area of the current building square footage shall be prohibited. Condition number 3, short-term rental of the proposed apartment units shall not be allowed, and minimum lease term shall be 6 months. Condition number 4, operating hours of the proposed retail bakery shall be limited as outlined below, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Condition number 5, minimum of 10 bicycle parking spaces shall be provided on site. Condition number 6, all refuse containers and mechanical equipment shall be completely screened from view of all adjacent properties and all public right-of-ways. Design of any screening of such containers and equipment shall be subject to Memphis Landmarks Commission review and certificate of appropriateness approval. Condition number 7, all exterior alterations, site improvements, demolition, and/or new construction that are visible from the street shall be subject to the Memphis Landmarks Commission review and a certificate of appropriateness approval. And any change or deviation from the site plan upon the determination of the zoning administrator shall be submitted to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval, or administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Are there any questions of staff?
I do. I have a question, and Mr. Ragsdale, I think you may have been talking about this right when we first got started on this, and I was half listening, I guess. I didn't get it. This significant neighborhood structure, can you apply for any use under that? Is there any limits to what you can apply for, or can it be anything?
Correct. In the use chart, there are certain things that are listed, and a lot of those are, commercial. The bakery retail is listed there, and that's one of the reasons that they applied originally, and we had discussed this, and they applied for the conditional use permit. The apartment is not listed there, but, you could still approve that. But the previous case that I referred to was strictly apartments that was originally, and this was 2013, but it followed the exact same because we don't have a lot of these structures, obviously, but this is a very similar case. That case was originally submitted as a significant neighborhood structure, but it was only apartments, and the Board of Adjustment at that time approved it as a use variance. So that's the distinction. So what I was saying, this would be just a use variance then.
So we're really just looking at a use variance. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I have one other question while I have your attention. Just the way this is written, I'm just making sure that it's only bakery retail. We're not talking about the whole laundry list of commercial retail, are we?
Correct. It would just be that bakery retail and apartments. Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the parking on the bakery retail, is that parking required and or accounted with the proposed apartment complexes? How does that work?
The total of 16 parking spaces were calculated, including the apartment and the retail bakery.
Okay.
Per the UDC, the retail uses are required to have one parking space per 1,000 square feet, and the calculation, I believe, ended up with 1.78 parking spaces per the bakery retail, which was rounded up to 2 and included into that 16. So the total will be 16. It's 2 parking spaces for bakery retail use.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions of staff? Seeing none, if the applicant will come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Frank Smith, 303 Kenilworth Place.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure to get some correct context. I'm the current owner, or actually the entity that I own is the current owner of this property since last December or so. I am not part of the development team that's proposing this project, but as the current owner, I wanted to give some context to what we're doing here today. I'll start by saying, first of all, I'm a preservationist at heart. I'm a neighbor. I'm an evergreener myself. I live in a house just a few blocks away from the corner of Evergreen and Autumn, in a house that's 100 years old and needed much renovation when I bought it. Surprisingly, I got a lot of objection from while I was doing that renovation, but I think today that my neighbors behind me would join me in celebrating that it was a successful project in the neighborhood that I love. And just like everyone in this audience today, I also was disturbed by the condition of this property. Here is this beautiful and historic property that has been empty and abandoned and in much need of repair. It's disturbed me for a long time, but I know it's been disturbing the neighbors for 25 years, I find out. So during COVID, I had an opportunity to be curious. I had a little extra time, and I started asking questions. I could hear a lot of people talking about the property. I could hear people that didn't have many facts, and they weren't taking any action, but there was a lot of rumors. So I decided I'm gonna see what I can do to find out what this property is about. I spent about a year and a half or so researching, spent a bit of money on legal help to try to figure out how do you get title to a property that the owner doesn't exist anymore, because this church had long since ceased to exist. And I'll be darned, I figured it out, how to get clear title to a property that nobody owns. I was very proud of that and very excited to come tell the community that, look, now for the first time we can do something about this piece of property that we all, I think we all like. We don't want to see it torn down, or at least I don't want to see it torn down. What can we do? The first person I called was Steve Barlow with Neighborhood Preservation, Inc. to tell him about it. When I learned, surprisingly, that the city had just entered a nuisance lawsuit. Oh, wow, that's going to make it more complicated, but I'll keep going. Step two was I said, well, let me do some structural engineer. So engineer works. I hired Chad Stewart's firm and found out that while the roof is decimated, the walls and foundation of this place is like a fortress. So that was good news. I immediately got busy with exterior cleanup. It hadn't been very well maintained on the exterior of the property for years and years. So I did the best I could, as quick as I could, to get it cleaned exterior, cleaned the interior, lots and lots of dumpsters of stuff that had been stored there for years and years, so that we can now have an open palette to look and see what might happen with this property. All the while working with the city, working with Judge Dandridge as we looked toward coming up with a development plan. I'm not a developer, but I know a few. I surveyed the building. I've talked to every architect I could find, every developer I could find, looking for capital partners that might come together, looking for what might be the next step for this property. And after a little while, those that stepped up were the passionate, courageous neighbors behind me who decided we have an idea of what we might do for this property, and that's what we're going to hear about today. So I just wanted to give my context. Why is it that I'm involved in this, even though I'm not part of the development team, but because I own the entity that owns the property, I just wanted to let everybody know why it is that I'd like to see this building have a chance to be restored and redeemed, not torn down.
Are there any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, very good. We got 10 minutes, and that was 5, just to give you a heads up. Okay, you'll give your name and address for the record.
Laurinas Petrauskas. I live at 417 North Avalon Street.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and share with us.
Right. Well, like Mr. Frank said, he approached me around last winter. I'm also a neighborhood I'm a neighbor in the Evergreen District. I have 3 kids there. I live 2 blocks west of the church. And when Mr. Frank Smith reached out to me, I was very excited to work and find out, what are the possibilities for this building. But as a builder and a general contractor myself, and I quickly realized that the actual cost to renovate an old building, while it has good bones, it's still going to take a lot of money and a lot of effort from everybody here in our team to restore it. And along my way, I met John Paul, who I'll let talk for a minute too. But as I stand here again, I'm a neighbor. This isn't a profit-driven project. We would just like to see the building restored, and this is what I think is our highest and best use. And I'll hand the mic to...
How are y'all this afternoon? I'll keep it quick.
Name and address for the record.
John Paul Gagliano, 2835 Old Pike Drive.
Okay, and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, go ahead.
As mentioned, my name is John Paul Gagliano. I've been working with Frank and LP and Kate for roughly 10 months on this project. I grew up directly in front of this church my entire life and personally know majority of the opposition as they've watched me grow up as being a young child. My mother still currently lives in the home directly across the street from the church for 32 plus years. Since she has bought 2 homes on either side of that on Dickinson, where my brothers currently reside, directly facing the church. My children visit weekly. We also own and operate 2 successful family-run restaurants just a block away from the church. I've had a strong passion for this building for a number of years. I originally proposed a commercial use in the early stages of this project, specifically a coffee shop and bakery as an amenity for the neighborhood. Our current businesses are built on family tradition, local ingredients, foreign concept. As my mother was born in Germany, spent years in Italy, and brought an amazing vision with her to Memphis that she has directly applied to the Evergreen Historic District. We thrive on the neighborhood atmosphere, being able to walk out your door to a local eatery and enjoy delicious food. It's a concept picking up in many cities across the nation, of which Memphis doesn't see much of. Upon moving forward with the project, we received strong opposition to something we thought would be a nice family-friend neighborhood gathering area, and since have reconsidered and revised these plans, of which Kate will review here in just a moment. Over the months, I, alongside my team members, have taken time to meet with the Evergreen Board, members, surrounding neighbors, and attend meetings to get feedback and come up with a viable solution for everybody. Instead, we have received mean messages, vast majorities of neighbors not wanting to meet, and even talks of beginning a boycott to our current establishments that has supported the neighborhood that we're in right now. I see the vote no and save Evergreen signs behind me, and I hope that each and every neighbor or non-neighbor with the concerns that we approach this project from all angles. We care because we too are neighbors wanting to grow in a safe, positive direction to preserve the integrity of our neighborhood. I hope we let our passion for positive change drive us to action and not anger. to reach out to one another and collaborate on a journey ahead. To the opposition, I urge you to lend your voice, your time, your passion to cause of making something in the neighborhood the best it can be. I want to personally thank the neighbors that gave us time, feedback, and encouragement. None of this was meant to be detrimental to the neighborhood or to your properties itself. And I'll pass this on to Kate now. Thanks.
Okay. All right, are there any questions? Oh, we got a minute and a half.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Kate Haywood, 65 Union Avenue, Suite 820, Memphis, Tennessee, 38103. So
Okay,
actually,
let me, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So the first 3 slides you'll see are the kind of the initial proposal that we put forth before the board. We have really focused on the overall parking strategy by reallocating our larger than necessary right-of-way in this area, as well as working with some of the western end of this property to solve this parking solution. And the other item that we have really focused on is looking at HVAC locations to where those could be fully screened, as well as the dumpster that will be more integrated within the southwest corner of this building to support the use. The other, these are the overarching, themes of feedback that we have heard from the group behind us. And I want to speak on the 2 other items below. Commercial activity first. I would like to scroll to the next slide. With all of the feedback that we have gained, we see that it is in collaboration with the Evergreen District to really pull the bakery and retail use from this proposal. So what you are seeing in front of you today is a 12-unit, 1-bedroom proposal. And so what this does is it makes it to where this is a possible project that can be funded with that income source, but really reducing the perceived kind of difficulties that would come along with a retail and bakery component in the ground level of this development. And so moving on to the next slide, this is just the numbers. Yeah. You'll see where it works on the left-hand side, barely with 12 units, and a pro forma ran on the right side, just bumping it down to 10 units, and it's a negative cash flow at that point. Welcome to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll have some rebuttal time too where you can add to it. But are there questions though of the applicant before we move to the opposition? Okay, so we're going to move to the opposition. I think, are you Ms. Smith? Come on up. Okay, and if you'll give your name and address for the record.
My name is Carolyn Smith. I live at 1669 Autumn.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Smith.
And we have the presentation there. So I've been a resident of Evergreen for 12 years now. I bought the property right next door to the vacant building we're talking about in November last year. To move in with my 2 little boys that go to Snowden, and I wanted a place where they could walk to school from that house. I'm here to speak for the neighbors of this property in our neighborhood, and we have a lot of people that showed up today. I wanted them to rise to show who they are, but we counted over 40 people that showed up. I'm also a member of the Evergreen Historical District Association, and as you know, you got a letter of opposition also from our board here. We have counted 95 letters in opposition that were sent in and 5 that were supporting. If you could, Jim, show the maps, please. I think we all want to save this building, but we feel that there's better ways to do this than what is proposed here. Can you show the map of this? Yeah, absolutely, thank you. And so we have a few talking points we'd like to cover. We'll try to do that in 10 minutes. We believe that the neighborhood residents overwhelmingly oppose this proposition. We do want to save the building, but we think there's a better way to do it. This is not the last chance for this building. There's a couple of zoning issues that we'll bring up. We also feel like the city must not give that public street to a private development, and that the 24/7 use that will be done of this area is not equivalent to a 2-hour a week church service like it used to be. We think that this proposal creates an undue and adverse impact on the neighbors, and that the burden of proof to demonstrate that this is not the case is not on the neighbors, but on the applicant, and I don't think they've done that. So we'd like to ask you to please support our neighborhood residents in rejecting this. And I would like to point out a couple of the things You know, the staff report said there's no substantial or undue adverse effect upon the adjacent properties and the character of the neighborhood. So I'd like to point out a couple of things to show that we disagree. Jim, so the adjacent property is mine. It's what we don't see on the plans very well when you look at them is that my house is 10 feet away from that church building. And my fence, my property line, the whole east side of the building is 3 feet away. I can reach out over the fence and touch it. Literally. And all the other neighbors around, this is a city, right? It's Evergreen, it's all close by, and everybody's very close around. We feel like the plan is very vague. There's nothing about the HVAC. You know, you've heard it's a concern that we have raised before in this plan. There's no room around the building to put them, which means that it would have to be located on the roof probably. And the roof is right now like a little hip roof, I think it's called. And so they would have to demolish it, which is not conform with the historical structure that we have now anyway. And our biggest concern with that is that even with 12 residential unit that we just heard about 2 seconds ago, by the way, this is a new thing, it's still 12 HVAC units that would need to be located on the roof, which means a ton of noise pollution for all the neighbors around, and what makes our yard unusable and basically impacts the property value of all our homes that live around there. We're not going to talk much about the commercial operation, but just to say that exhaust that would be on my kids' trampoline was not, you know, something that I would have loved to have, and we don't think the hours of operation could be enforced, but let's move on since it seems like it's not in the plan anymore. The dumpster location. So even with 12 residential units compared to commercial, you're still going to need a lot of trash management. A big site for a dumpster or a huge like parking lot of little carts or something like that. Of course, if it's food production, it would attract vermin, but wherever it is on this plan, it will be highly visible from the street and from the neighbors. And the location they were showing now is not possible. There's a utility pole right there that will not be moved. And the alley is very narrow and very steep there, which we're trying to show on this picture. So even if you try to give access on the side, I don't think the trash cart could access 12, the trash truck couldn't pick up 12 trash carts there on that area. And finally, last point I wanted to make is the added traffic that would be caused by the overuse of this building and the commercial use too, but even with 12 residents, we're talking a lot of cars that are there in that angle parking. It would be a safety issue for all the walkers we have. These streets are very narrow, quiet little side streets in the middle of a residential neighborhood. We have a lot of kids walking to school, including my 2 boys, and we have a lot of people on bikes, and I invite you to come, you know, when people are walking their dogs and walking around, and that's part of the Evergreen neighborhood. That's the character of our neighborhood, to be able to safely walk around, and with all those cars that are there parked and them backing up into traffic from that angle parking, is going to create a lot of danger for our pedestrian and cyclists. So I would like to leave Don Jones to talk about the other points we have. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jones, if you'll give your name and address for the record, and we're at like 5 minutes.
Don Jones, 1763 Peach Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
I'm here representing the EHDA as a member of their board and also as a retired planner, as a part of your staff. We've heard 2 very major changes discussed today regarding getting rid of the commercial and adding yet more residential units, and an argument based from our planning administrator that even though the code says that apartments cannot be considered under your uses permitted chart for neighborhood structure or conditional use permit, we are nonetheless going forward in something the equivalent to a use variance. I don't think that's fair process. I don't think that's correct public process. And these changes alone warrant this item be continued. That being said, we've endeavored to try to pick for you what this parking would look like as it's currently configured in this application. We think it's clear that it's an unwarranted encroachment, and it encroaches into the streetscape, which we'll point out. This is done to meet the parking requirement demanded by their development proposal, and we think it has undue adverse effects. We're not alone in thinking that this is a commercial adaptation, because Memphis 3.0 says that we are a local residential street and that you should have a streetscape that shows 5 feet of green strip, 5 feet of sidewalk. We think the parking is undercalculated and may still be with the multifamily. We haven't had a chance to focus completely on that aspect because the commercial was out of whack. But we'll move on. One more slide, please, Jim, one more slide. So we attempted to depict to you what this means when you use the parking that they want to have. You want to do this angled parking, you're removing that grass utility strip, and you're encroaching into the sidewalk, as with me standing there on that sidewalk. This is a busy grass strip that includes overhead utilities. You see on this pole that we've got 3 transformers. This is the main trunk line. You see on the other side a gas line extended into this area. Neither of these are covered in your parking diagram, and also you're not including any handicap parking in that diagram. I'll move from specific to more general and stay at the fact that this is not consistent with Memphis 3.0, even though your staff report is trying to say that it is. This is a primarily single-unit neighborhood with residential single-unit houses that are more than a half a mile away from the nearest commercial anchor. This is not an approach that Memphis 3.0 uses for something this far away from that community anchor. We believe this proposal is completely out of context with the surrounding neighborhood. I'd like to call on Andy Kitzinger to finish up our thoughts.
We're at 2:20. Mr., if you'll give your name and address.
2:20 remaining.
2:20 remaining, if you'll give your name and address for us, for the record.
Andy Kitzinger. I live at the corner of Dickinson and Overton Park, 1665 Overton Park.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kitzinger.
So the neighborhood is overwhelmingly concerned about the density that was originally proposed. Now we're hearing that the density has increased. We were originally just under 40 units per acre. And as planners, we use density to establish the character of a place. 40 units to the acre, more than 5 times what is in the neighborhood, will drastically change the character of this place. So we submit that the proposed density is not about saving the historic building. It's not about providing coffee to your neighbors. It's about cash flow. It's about profits. And we think it's inappropriate for this use. Apartments, looking at the Unified Development Code, apartments do not qualify under the use table for what this application is being applied for. Apartments are not allowable in R6 under a significant structure category. Next. You can see the use table. Again, the use table is the gatekeeper of every permitted use in the city. That's why it's in the front of the UDC. And you can see in an R6 and apartments, it's not allowable. You can see commercial is allowable under a significant structure, but not apartments. So accessibility, an issue that's important, but we agree with the Center for Independent Living that the building should be accessible regardless of what configuration it takes. Next. We see that this requires at least 4 significant variances. The commercial was the only thing that met the use code originally as a conditional use of significant structure. Off-street parking exemptions. To provide a public street for a developer to serve his parking requirements is a bad precedent to set for this city. We ask you to support the neighborhood and decline this application, and we're available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Good wrap up as well. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Are there any questions for the opposition?
I have
We do have some. Okay, go ahead.
Currently, in the area, near Williamson Park and Overton Park, you have the Barton's Car Care Center and several other little neighborhood shops. I'm saying currently, there's the Barton Car Care Center and other neighborhood shops that also are commercial, and the car care center is very heavy commercial. And that currently matches the development of the neighborhood because they're walking dogs past the car care center. So how is your, I guess, reconciliation with those businesses and versus this one?
Yeah, you have to look at each street by street in the Unified Development Code and the Memphis 3.0 street master plan. Overton Park is a lot different character street than Dickinson. Dickinson is a local residential, single-family street. Overton Park is more of a thoroughfare. We would like speed bumps on it, but it's more of a thoroughfare. It's got more intensive uses than Dickinson in that block.
And also, is there a more objection to the multifamily or more objection to the commercial, or is it just a flat-out objection to both?
We have a different vision for the future of this property. We want to see the church renovated. We support the historic renovation of the church. We think it should be a low-density residential development with parking accommodated on site. That's what we the neighbors would like to see. We don't think 10 units, 8 units, 6 units, that's not low density. That's medium to high density.
Just want to get clarification. Thank you.
How long was it empty before? How long did it sit vacant prior to any plans being considered for it?
I would let the applicant answer that question, but you know, I've been there 26 years, and of course congregations kind of get smaller and smaller and meet less often, but it's been vacant for a long time. It's definitely, all the neighbors think it's a nuisance. It's been a problem property, and something needs to be done with it. We're hoping that the city environmental court does something with it, and we hope that it can be redeveloped and saved.
Other questions? All right, thank you all very much. If the applicant would like to come back and rebut, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you again. I hear the neighbors say that they do want the building preserved, which I'm a little bit surprised, because this church, I think when Frank acquired it in December of last year, it was no secret. Frank went and told everybody, I bought this building. But instead, he was received with backlash from the neighborhood saying, why did you buy it? We've had this in environmental court case. We were hoping to condemn the building so that hopefully it'll get torn down. We've engaged the neighborhood. We've engaged with Evergreen Historic District 3 times. We've had meetings. We've presented the building. We've tried to get the neighborhood's input. And I'll let John Paul also just kind of go back and what neighbors he talked. Those are his neighbors. Some of these neighbors babysat him when he was a kid. And we try to facilitate front porch meetings and say, this is our community, this is our church, this is our building, what can we do with it? But nothing, I don't think, Frank, did you get any proposals? I mean, nobody stepped up. And if you could go to Performa as a builder, you got a 10,000 square foot church. I mean, it needs a total overhaul. That's 1.5 million in construction cost alone. When you factor that in with today's interest rates, I don't know how to make this project feasible, you know? John Paul, I mean, you want to talk about the neighbors you met and the porch meetings we had and, you know?
I was able to reach out to a couple of neighbors that I've known for a very long time. Some met, others didn't want to. I think a lot of word got passed around upon meeting people, and I think that there was an overall idea of what wanted to be done with the church. I think the neighborhood wants to see a single-family residence there. I stand alongside, again, everybody in this opposing as well. I want to figure out something that we can do to this building that makes it work without tearing it down. And going back to LP's point, it's a huge project. It's going to take a lot of money, and if we can't do 12, 10, 8, 6, what is going to make this a viable solution financially? Putting a $1 million home plus there. I mean, we've even reached out as far as demolition costs.
Okay.
We're looking at upwards of.
Are there any questions? Sorry, we're out of time. I appreciate it. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but, are there other uses of the property that would work financially? I know that's a broad question, but
That was part of the reason why we were meeting. I mean, I've thrown out a number. I mean, we thought it can't be a church anymore. It's just not financially there. I thought it would make a great venue that takes up parking and noise. Single-family residence, in order to get tore down again, we've gotten quotes upwards of $300,000+ to get the building torn down, plus to deal with the grade itself. It's a costly job overall, and to get it done right, we're open to any and all suggestions. And that's essentially all we've come up with, is something that is almost at a break-even point. But we felt, being neighbors involved in the neighborhood, having businesses in the neighborhood, living in the neighborhood, that this could potentially be something that we're directly involved with over time. Not something that just some developers coming in, putting in money, cash flowing. This obviously shows that it's not much of a.
some of your neighbors suggested you making it a low-density, residential property, or whatever other suggestions that they had a while ago. Did you consider any of those things, and could they work?
Yeah.
Well, with all due respect, I mean, if the renovation cost of the entire building takes such a huge amount of money, I don't foresee us being able to sell 2 condos at $1 million each with no parking, off-street parking. I think a residential multifamily use is least intense. I mean, for this building of this type, and we are just at a break-even point here. I mean, I'm happy to let anybody else take a crack at it, but it's been 9 months. I mean, Frank has had control of this building and nobody stepped up. In March, I've hired an architecture student, and we did a computer design model of the church as built. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And we've shared the computer model to many architecture firms. Some of these architects that live in our neighborhood say, here's the building, here's the plans, what can we do? Nobody showed up. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
What was the new density based on the 12 units? What was the breakdown of that, as far as, were they 1-bedroom units? Can you remind me again if they're, okay.
Could I answer you specifically, Aaron?
Yeah.
So the density of the proposal that we put before you all today is 12 1-bedroom units. And so the previous residential component of this proposal was 12 bedrooms over 10 units. This is 12 bedrooms over 12 units.
Okay.
And so that was the consideration when we pulled the commercial element from the pro forma. That is where we had to modify the 2 beds to 1 beds to make that math work out for the development finances.
Yeah. Okay, other questions? All right, seeing none. So we always vote in the affirmative. So for us to discuss this, could we get a motion to approve BOA 23-119 as conditioned by staff?
Approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
One thought that comes to mind for me is if this property has been vacant for a long time, and you know, nothing's happened to it. Now we've got somebody that bought the property and has a plan. You know, it can be easy to just, you know, to object to something without having, you know, without, you know, being willing to step up and deal with the problem yourself. And I've seen it happen in many organizations. Somebody comes up with a plan to do something and everybody else just pokes holes in and says no, but no one steps up with a plan. So what happens is nothing gets done. I think that they all want something to happen to this property. They don't want it to sit vacant. You know, so how do you get to a place where you have a plan that everybody agrees with? I don't know. I do think, you know, there is one neighbor who is trying to come up with something, and I'd like to, you know, figure out a way that he can to not say no just to say no, but if you're going to say no, have a plan to take its place, as opposed to letting the building sit vacant for, you know, another 10 years.
Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts as well. You know, this building sat for, I'm assuming, 20 years, which gave a lot of residents a chance to brainstorm what could this building be. And when one resident takes it upon himself to purchase it and come up with a plan that could be financially, you know, net zero even, or, you know, it's kind of hard for people then at that point to say what they would like it to be, because it might not be financially feasible what you would like it to be. Being a church might not be financially feasible unless you have a church willing to come and pay what that building costs to renovate. So it's kind of hard to, unless the neighborhood as a whole wants to contribute to what it can be that makes sense. It's kind of hard to say what you want it to be if it's not financially feasible. He might not make a lot of money on this project, but I'm pretty sure that they don't want to lose money on developing it.
Let me ask this question. For a use permit, do we have to determine any type of hardship or impracticability of the property? What is our requirements for uses versus the regular variance?
Correct. Actually, if you don't answer, you only answer.
Yeah, we need to confirm some impracticality of the allowed uses not being feasible for the subject site of the case, so that the proposed use, which requires a variance, will be justified.
Okay, so in going down that vein, what was our impracticability of the property or the hardship?
Well, the current use is listed as religious commercial, which is basically the church itself. However, right now, there is no possibility of another congregation to occupy the existing structure and operate as a church.
Based on?
An empty.
An empty, okay.
Based on the letter of intent that I got from the applicant.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm trying to help you expound on and give it some definition. If we're going to say, you know, it has to have some impracticability or some hardship, for the record, we need to know what that is. So when we're deciding yay or nay, did they meet that requirement? You follow what I'm saying? So I just wanted to hear what that was.
Yeah, staff, we initially agreed with the applicant's letter of intent, saying that it's not practicable for a church coming back to the building. It's very unlikely.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to build, I guess, on what's been said. And the way I look at this is we have a plan before us. I mean, we don't have what can be done with this property. We have a plan before us, and we don't have any other plan. And so this is an extremely important location in a great neighborhood. And I just think we have to take it very seriously. And this plan that's before us right now, even with just the 12 units and without the commercial, I still believe that it's not the right plan for this location and for this property.
Go ahead.
The property is just not large enough. The whole property is taken up with a building. I agree with what was said several times in this handout, that the plan we have before us is so vague. I mean, you have no idea how they're going to be able to.
We're in discussion. We don't need extra comments.
You know, how are they going to be able to, provide the ventilation, provide the HVAC, get the trash, to the dumpster and have it picked up, the parking. I mean, it's just, there's so much to it when you put 12 units on this relatively small piece of property. And not only that, it's not the location for that kind of density. So I guess I say that I agree with other board members who have said that something needs to be done about this property. And it may not be exactly what the neighbors want. It may not be exactly what the applicant wants. They got to come to the middle, I think, about this. And I think this case has upped the urgency. I mean, everybody now sees the urgency that something needs to be done here. It's been vacant so long. And so that's how I see it. And I don't think this is the right plan for this property, and even without the commercial. And so, I would not be able to support it, but I might be able to support some other plan in the future. But that'll be another plan that comes to us. I don't think we can engineer one here, is I guess what I'm saying.
What would have been great, I guess, to have, to your point, would have been meaningful feedback from the community when these questions were asked of how do we envision this, which it sounds like that is not what came back when those things were asked. So they had to go with what they knew, which was, let's do 10 units of residential with a bakery. Let's do 12 units, because nobody provided an idea that was feasible, that made sense to come back and say, well, why don't you do this? I think that's the biggest challenge is we reject the 12 units of residential. Now what with this building?
Mr. Chairman, I think the ideal solution, and I know they've tried this, but maybe there's a way that we can get them to do it again. The ideal solution is for them to talk and come up with get input from the neighborhood on the plan, and maybe the neighbors can actually give input, be more responsive than it sounds like they were the first time. But if so maybe the way to get there is if this application is held another month. And now there's urgency because they'll be right back before us next month. And maybe the neighbors can get with him and work out some kind of plan that's affordable because they've got real money in it. The rest of the neighbors don't. But that everybody can live with. So I right now that's the best solution I can come up with. That maybe they hold it for another month, take more time to try to talk and come up with a better solution, and then come back before us later.
Are you wanting to make a motion for a hold with that?
I do. Okay. So he does. So we can move that. We can take that action.
Yeah, it's a procedural motion that it would take precedent over the motion that's on the table.
Okay. Well, I move that the application be held for another 30 days.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I ask a question? Well,
okay, that's fine too.
Honestly,
no, we're not. We're not hearing anything else. But it appears they would not like a hold, so we will vote on this as given to us, unless, the board wants them, and we can do whatever we want on that. So. My deal, I just think that church takes up so much of the property, it just doesn't leave any room for the other things you need to have that many people on site. I know we did another church down in Midtown. I think it was the old First Congregational Church. and it actually had like driveways on site and stuff like that, and like lawn, instead of like just a little small front lawn. It had like a little more area around it, and so it didn't seem quite so boom. So I just think that 12 units is too many for me to vote yes for.
Are we stuck on 12 units? I mean, I guess that's the question.
We have a site plan before us, so that's all we would have, yeah.
And so if we deny the application, I guess the applicant can come back with another plan.
Whether they would come back, they could come back with a different plan with a different number of units and different number of site plan, correct?
If it's substantially different, they can. Of course, you do have two plans in front of you.
Yeah.
And of course, you can do whatever with those plans that you would like, so.
Sure, okay.
You know, if you want to make adjustments to those things or.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there are some options there that if you want to discuss and consider.
Okay. Does anybody want to consider any other options or just have a yay or nay vote on this?
I'm ready for yea or nay. I don't think the impracticability and the hardship has been argued to me. I don't see it.
Okay. All right, if you'll give us a roll call vote, Mr. Ragsdale.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook.
No.
Ms. Bostic.
No.
Ms. Baker.
No.
Ms. Scurlock.
No.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns.
No, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are not being met and that the property would be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Real quick, I think that everybody so far has been very respectful in how we've acted today. I appreciate that. I hope that when we announce the verdict, we're all respectful without that. Usually in a situation like this doesn't call for yelling or clapping. So I just want to remind everybody that, but I'm going to vote no.
So we have 2 yes and 6 no's.
Okay, so the motion fails. Thank you all for coming down today. And I would wish the applicant the best and come up with a project that maybe can be a little more fitting. That doesn't mean it's, 2 condos either. So, but good luck. Mr. Ragsdale, we would like to entertain a motion to hear case number 2. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Would someone make a motion to hear case number 2 that went on consent?
Second.
All right, being moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Hey.
Okay.
We're still in hearing mode, so if y'all could just talk when you get outside, if you don't mind. Thank y'all.
All right. Excuse me. Item number 2, BOA 2023-089, 1637 Britton Street.
All right, if the applicant is here. Okay, I see y'all. Ms. Cobbs, can you give us a brief staff report real quick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kendra Cobbs, DPD. This is a use variance request to allow a social service institution and also variances from sub-items 42C2E2 and item 454B3C to allow an accessory parking lot in the R6 district. So this is located in the Hollywood neighborhood. And also the vicinity map shows where public notices were sent. 260 property owners received public notice. And once again, so this is zone residential single family 6. And also there is a special use permit 1996-242 that is a part of these lots where I have the cursor. And then also the accessory parking lot is proposed here at the corner of Britton Street and Shannon Avenue. So this is a residential area, primarily single-family homes. There are a few vacancies, quite a few vacant lots in the area, and there are also some transitional uses and small neighborhood commercial type uses. These are images of the site. Currently, it is occupied by the Memphis Lift organization, and the site that's adjacent was a parking lot, which is proposed to be an expansion of this building where Memphis Lift is currently operating. And this is an image to the left of the parking lot that is a part of the request to be an accessory parking area for the Memphis Lift organization and the building expansion. So here's an aerial view. We have the two parcels 6 and 7, which are part of the SUP that was approved, and it was approved for a daycare. And a part of that approval allowed the daycare to operate in this structure seen on parcel 6. And then there were 7 parking spaces associated with the approval here on parcel 7. This new parcel here at the corner is an addition, part of the proposal. This is the site plan showing the building expansion of parcels 6 and 7, and then the parking lot is proposed to be 6 parking spaces, asphalt parking lot, that because the applicant would like to expand the building over to this adjacent lot, which was the parking that was approved a part of the special use permit. That is the reason that they have proposed this parking lot here at the corner. Here are elevations proposed as a part of the permit for the site. And while this use is not compatible with the land use description, intent, and form and location characteristics, Memphis 3.0 review did find it consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. So to conclude, the applicant is seeking to legitimize the social service institution use on the 2 parcels, 6 and 7. It was previously approved to be operated as a daycare in 1996, or actually in 1997. And at some point, that use changed to a social service institution use, which is Memphis Lift. And so the applicant is seeking to legitimize that and also permit an accessory parking lot in order to allow for the expansion of the site. Because the daycare was previously approved on the 2 parcels, sorry, I'd already mentioned that. Staff believes the scale of the proposal to expand the building is out of balance with the surrounding properties, and the proposed size of the expansion increases the number of parking spaces required that still would not be met by the accessory parking lot. Therefore, staff feels granting of the social service institution use variance will not cause substantial detriment to the public good. However, the scale of the associated building expansion and parking lot will be injurious to the neighborhood and will not be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the UDC. So we're recommending approval of the social service institution use with the following conditions. The main one being that the accessory parking lot proposed is not permitted, and also the scale of the site of the expansion should be in harmony with the residential character and scale of the existing structures. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cobbs. Are there any questions of staff?
I have a question. I'm curious about this lot consolidation plat. I've never seen, do we do those, or do we just let them build over the property lines?
That was why that was included as the condition, since the expansion would be over the property line. In order to clean that up, we're proposing that there is a lot consolidation plat that we would approve.
But we don't normally require that, do we? I mean, people assemble properties all the time, and half of Midtown is built on 2 25-foot lots or 3 15-foot lots. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just was curious why suddenly that was a requirement. Doesn't
It's just
matter, I
a
guess.
cleaner way to allow for an expansion of a building over property
Okay.
lines.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? All right, the applicant will come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. I'm Jimmy Tucker with Self Tucker Architects. My address is 480 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Okay, very pleased to be here to represent this project for Memphis Lift, and it is indeed doing some exceptional work here in the community. They have been based here on Britain Street for about 7 years in the building that you saw with the adjacent parking. And so one of the goals of this project is to allow them to expand and basically by creating an adjacent building that would have connections to the existing building, really to allow the organization to function more effectively. Now, we did consider an option of building across the street during our design process, but really concluded that it was better to utilize the adjacent property, move the parking, the 7 spaces that had existed there, move them across the street. And the organization has about a staff of 10. So there is a need to accommodate the parking for that team, and they have utilized the adjacent parking over the years. Now, some of them are working hybrid, so there is a possibility that be a need every day for 10 cars to be on site. There is public transportation there at Britain and Chelsea that's also nearby. We have provided a bicycle rack as well, thinking in terms of the sustainability of the project and trying to make this project very much a walkable neighborhood as well. But I do want to point out that we very intentionally designed the new building as one that was in scale with the neighborhood. The new building, for example, the existing building is right around 2,000 square feet, and the new building is 2,200 square feet. We do have a deck in between that allows activities to take place on the exterior of the building. We really want to encourage people that will be visiting and working there to have the option of coming outside and not just being contained in the interior of a building. But in essence, again, we feel like this project is very much in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Memphis Lift is an incredible organization that's really doing excellent work, not just in this building, but in the entire community. And so we're trying to do whatever we can to make this project possible and one that will allow them to function well in the future and continue to do the amazing work that they do. So I certainly welcome any questions, but hopefully you would support this project.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to clarify and make sure the adjacent parking lot will be just a parking lot. We're not intending to add another building, or is that?
No, certainly not. We definitely need that parking lot. And again, what I didn't say a minute ago is that we've been looking at ways of having fencing around the property that would make it aesthetically pleasing, having even some seating that would be on the perimeter of the property, landscaping around that parking lot. So again, in addition to the building itself that's being built, the parking could be seen as an amenity, an improvement to a site that's currently vacant.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Tucker, are you satisfied with the conditions that are placed on this approval?
Well, the main one that we appreciated it being on the consent agenda initially, but we said we've got to get some clarity around the use of parking. But other than the parking, that's the one that really
Parking is your
concerns
only
us.
concern? Okay,
Right.
okay.
Let me ask you this. I'm pulling up the conditions here. They're saying the scale of the structure's too big and want the structure smaller too. So I think isn't that correct, Mr. Ragsdale? So the structure even on is not approved by this variance.
Condition number 1, is that what you're
Yeah,
looking at?
I think so.
Have you looked at condition number 1?
I'll read it. It's development of the site, including compliance with general development standards found in UDC Chapter 4.1 for expansion of building area will require administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development. So also comment about the staff believes the scale of the infill is out of balance, and they basically want you to redraw it and come up with something smaller.
Well, as I said, that's why I really made the statement about, I heard Ms. Cobb's presentation, but I guess one of the things I was reacting to was, and just wanted to clarify, is that we felt, again, we've been very intentional about building a new structure that is in scale with the existing structure. Now, our structure is like other buildings in the neighborhood. It is 2 stories, which allowed us to actually have a smaller footprint, but also a way in which to take up less space on the adjacent site that we're building on and create more outdoor space between the 2 buildings. And we do also have a ramp that is kind of a bridge between the 2 buildings.
Right.
Because we did want the buildings to look like one building.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's seeing them from the street, and that ramp is what allows a connection. It's a porch and a ramp combined. So hopefully I'm understanding some of the potential conditions.
I could be wrong, Ms. Cobbs. You can correct us on this. Your condition about scale, does it have to do with the length of the building and how far it extends into the rear of the lot?
Yes, the width of the building, and then also it appears that the size of the structure would require the additional number of parking spaces to be met. With this being a social service institution, the parking spaces required would be 1 parking space per employee plus 1 space per 250 square feet of office space. So limiting or scaling down the size, in addition to having it be more compatible to the surrounding structures in between the 2 structures on site, because they're 2 single-family homes that will be on either side. So those are the issues that we were looking at.
And you said it was roughly 2,200 square feet total?
That's correct. And it might be helpful to bring up the actual site plan with the 2 buildings. I don't want to, that connection with the porch in the front to sort of give the misimpression about the project. Yeah, the one right here. So you can see there at the top of where it says existing building, and then you can actually see the new building has a smaller footprint. Now, again, we do have the ramp and the porch there at the front. But in terms of the scale, we've been very intentional about trying to make sure that this building was keeping to the scale of the neighborhood. I mean, that was an important goal of ours throughout the design process, but also it was important to have a way in which the team that's working in either building didn't feel like they were disconnected from one another. So that deck that you see in between, and also the porch, those were important amenities to allow the buildings to function together. But again, one building is about 2,000 square feet, a single story, and then our new building is 2,200 square feet, a multiple, two stories.
Yeah, that does help some, because the way it looked to me, the porch to me, that is really, the only way to get between the two buildings is outside on the porch.
That's correct. You do have to go outside.
And that area in the back there, that's porch too. That's not building, that's porch. Back behind those two buildings?
All the way at the back of the existing building, or?
Both.
Well, there is some land at the rear of each of the buildings. Again, that would just be other space, a kind of amenity space on the exterior of the building.
Gotcha, okay.
I hope I'm being clear about that.
I think so.
Again,
I mean, I can see that for the new building, I see your hard line showing the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just that there's a deck in between them and a porch on the front.
I also, excuse me, I also now see the reason to consolidate the lots because the existing building is on the lot line, it looks like.
Yeah. So, Ms. Cobbs, I think you told me earlier, or you told us, not just me, each employee needs a parking spot and then a parking spot per every 250 feet for public?
The office space.
Of what's used as office.
Right, 250 square feet of office space, one parking space is required.
And how much office space do we have, Mr. Tucker? Is it not the full 42?
It was 626 square feet of the building dedicated to office space.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, so that was, for us, we determined that was equaling 3 spaces.
Gotcha.
Right.
And then let me ask you this. You may have told us this, but what exactly is Lyft do? Can you give us just a little bit of their mission, like a little bit more of that?
Right. It basically, our executive director, Ms. Carpenter, Sarah Carpenter, she's an incredible person, and she can really tell you a lot more passionate than I possibly can. But primarily, the purpose of the organization is to help people who have students in various schools here in the city of Memphis. This organization advocates along with them so that they can get a better outcome for their students.
Okay.
Well, that's the primary purpose of the organization.
Oh, I got a hand.
I got you.
If you'll give your name and address for the record.
My name is Notoria Carpenter, 2100 Curry Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 31108.
Okay, hold on. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carpenter.
The Memphis Lyft is a parent advocacy organization where we go out and engage and empower parents throughout Memphis. We assist parents with school issues. We have a lot of parents. We serve a lot of underserved communities. The Memphis Lyft, we have a SPED department. We have choice counseling. I'm a part of the SURGE team where we actually go out throughout the community and engage and empower parents. And in this Parent Resource Center, our social services will be having a food pantry, clothes closet, because so many of our parents are in dire need, so we'll be a resource for parents, basically. But like I said, we assist and engage parents, and we help parents throughout Shelby County with schools and school issues.
And are those
And
parents...
we also do a fellowship where we train parents how to advocate and go to the school and advocate for their children. So we do a 10-week fellowship. We have a literacy fellowship we've been doing. We've been doing lifting reading. We've been having reading sessions where we've been testing children throughout the summer so parents can know what reading level their kids on. So we do a lot around education and helping families and engaging families.
How often are people not employees on site? I mean, and when you do, like, what are the numbers of those people there? Are you having groups of like 15 people showing up?
No, we can have 50,
oh, wow.
60. That's why we needed more space too, because we outgrew that other building. So we couldn't service a lot of people because of the capacity of the old building.
Okay.
So we do have a lot of parents that show up to our
Sure.
events and try to,
Well,
engage
where-
a lot of parents,
Where do they park when they come there? Or just on the street?
basically.
Yeah, but it's irregular, right? It's not every day.
No, we have a speaker series. We might do focus groups. So I know we'll at least have parents at least twice a month.
Other questions?
If there aren't any other questions, we certainly, again, we appreciate this opportunity, and we hope we'll get a positive vote from everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tucker. Is there anybody else here to speak in support? Okay, just making sure. And there's no opposition? Okay. Sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts. I guess we need to discuss this. Is there a motion to approve BOA 2023-89 as conditioned by staff?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so just to recap, what we did earlier was we approved the staff report, which basically approved the fact that it was originally approved like years ago by city council as a daycare. We've allowed it to be a social services institution there, but what we haven't approved is the size of the building or the parking across the street. And so if we're going to approve this to make any change in what we did, we need to talk about those matters, correct, Mr. Ragsdale?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't think the social service institution was ever approved, right? The daycare was, and then the SUP approved the parking.
The SUP approved the daycare on the two lots where the building exists, well, where the current building is, and then to the south parking, the 7 parking spaces, but not the third lot or parcel that's at the corner of Shannon Avenue and Britton Street.
Or the social service institute use.
Nor the social service
And what
institution.
I may have misspoke. We approved that at consent.
Oh,
If like that's what we we would have approved it earlier today before we pulled it back off of consent.
now we're on
That's
the
what I
same
meant.
page,
But that wasn't very
So
clear.
you still need to, yes.
Yeah, so right now we have no ruling on this at all because we've taken it off of consent.
And you still need to
consent.
approve the social service
Yeah.
institute, yes.
So we've got to at least do that to get us back to where we were at 2:15 today. Any thoughts?
Portion.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have a problem with social services. It just seems
yeah.
like there's a lot of people that could show up to this place that's in a neighborhood. And we're adding 6 parking spots across the street.
So I don't have a problem with the social service piece either. I also don't really see a problem with the scale per se of the new addition. To Jimmy's point, it looks like it's in line with what the existing building is from a size standpoint. Regarding the parking, I'm on a fence about that one because I feel like you need parking. There's not many options to where you can park. I'm just keep going back and forth on the drawings. You don't have a lot of options unless you completely. I mean, you can street park, and that might be more of a detriment than a dedicated parking lot. So I don't know about the parking, but I think definitively on my end, the use of the building and the square footage doesn't bother me.
Well, the problem I have, I agree with you, especially now that I understand the porch and deck, that it doesn't seem out of character, but with it being social services and so many attending, it gets me stuck on the street parking because there's just so much they need if they do have a function. Even if people doubled up, you got road frontage of not much in front of it, and you need at least 25 people that aren't even including staff. I'm just struggling with it. I mean, like, it sounds like an amazing, social services thing that they're doing. It's just, not a lot of room.
Does it bother you that the parking is a part of the street? Filling and putting parking on the, I guess I'm still.
I don't think we're supposed to like the parking being across the street, but it honestly doesn't bother me too much. There's churches are allowed in neighborhoods. They often are piecing together things to get parking across the street. So I think I can actually get by that hurdle. It's just the amount of the amount of stuff that's going on this one lot now in the middle of the neighborhood that would require any parking is where I'm stuck.
They scale down, would that allow for parking on that?
It'd be easier, but then they don't get to use it like they need to.
Yeah.
Back to square one. Right. They had parking before on site.
The thing I would hate to see too is just a whole lot of parking lots being paved, in that
Or
neighborhood.
twice a month.
Yep, for twice a month,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but, and I also, I agree with you as far as the parking, but also view it like the neighborhood churches that are like, say, in Orange Mound. When there's a funeral, there's a whole lot of, I just was at one.
Yeah.
Park, but funerals don't happen that often, even though it's a church, they have them, once or twice a month, maybe. Right. And I'm viewing this in a similar light to a neighborhood church where you have similar type housing, where you would have an event where people would park along street, but something that's servicing the neighborhood and the community. I would imagine that the neighbors are more amenable to short-term parking. It doesn't help them.
Nobody showed up. We know that.
Huh?
There was no opposition.
No, right.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It doesn't help them with the amount of the parking, but they would address it the same way that neighborhood churches in other parts of Memphis address it.
I wonder how often they have events that would require, bring in the 50 people that she
said twice a month.
Oh, twice a month.
Yeah.
And another thought is, if they're going to be there, probably everybody around them would rather them have a parking lot. There's less cars, fewer cars on the street. So they, they'd be okay with them having a parking lot as opposed to no parking lot. Just takes cars off the street.
Yeah,
I realize that parking lot's not going to be
covers
big
a lot
enough
of
for the
it's really
50
kind of covers staff parking.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's paved. It's a lot that's being paved. That's not good, but I think the benefits of having parking and not having those cars on the street, most of the neighbors probably would be okay with that.
Other thoughts? All right, so let's look. We need to if we want to approve this, we have to start messing with some of these conditions.
Yeah.
Let me pull them up.
What were the
Number 3.
You said it was condition 3. That he has to look, right.
No parking, no.
Oh, the accessory parking lot. Okay. Yeah.
I think we'd have to mess with number 1 just to say any deviation in the site plan would be require administrative review and approval or return to the BOA.
Yes.
Okay, so without objection, change number 1 to any deviation in the site plan will require administrative approval or a return to the Board of Adjustment as deemed necessary by the zoning administrator. And then number 3 is struck.
About number 2, limits the area of the building expansion to the amount that can be parked, I assume, by the one parking lot that they have. You would, I guess, have to delete that condition.
We've already approved the site plan, so we don't really need that. Correct. So delete number 2 and number 3.
Yes. And the change that